This is Jeff Kober, and we welcome you to Disney Insights. Thanks for joining us. Summer is here, and several new attractions have premiered at Walt Disney World and at Disneyland. We focus on a new mission for Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, one that is led by Din Dijarin, the Mandalorian, along with Grogu. We look at how this compares with the previous version of the attraction, and whether first-time as well as repeat guests will enjoy this experience. And we preface all of that with the new film, Star Wars, The Mandalorian and Grogu, which premiere on the same day that the new version of the attraction premiered in both parks. We experience both in the same day and can offer you insights as to why you might want to experience both of them. So join us as we head to the cinema and to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge for Mandalorian and Grogu, Movie and Ride, What Works and Doesn't. This podcast is produced by myself and Performance Journeys, which offers training, development, and consultant support to organizations big and small and entrepreneurs new and established. With a wide variety of resources and long-time in-the-trench experience, we offer workshops, online learning, coaching, and more to organizations that want to build their teams, raise organizational excellence, improve leadership, and create customer excellence. Check us out at performancejourneys.com. And as with our podcast, be sure to check out our websites, DisneyInsights.com, where we offer key points, photos, videos, links, and more. Plus, actually, the entire new attraction, all three versions. And note that our YouTube carries our podcast as well in its entirety. So please subscribe to our Disney Insights YouTube page. Give it a like, as it will be more a part of our social media strategy moving forward. With all of this, we encourage and appreciate any positive ratings, reviews, or referrals you offer to others. Well, let's start with the Star Wars, Mandalorian, and Grogu. What works about this film? If you were a kid in the 1950s or 1960s, then you know something about Saturday matinees, where films, often back-to-back, were shown to kids. Growing up in Arizona, the local TV celebrities, Wallace and Ladmo, would host such events at my nearby Christown Theater, handing out Ladmo bags full of goodies before the show. Such shows would often include sci-fi or fantasy genre, to include films like The Golden Voyage of Sinbad, Journey to the Center of the Earth, and The Time Machine. If you watch Light and Magic on Disney+, and I highly recommend you watch that documentary series, you are then made aware of the early influences that not only made Star Wars possible, but any major FX film, from Jurassic Park to Titanic to Pirates of the Caribbean to Avatar. Those cinematic pioneers, including George Lucas himself, were kids who went to Saturday matinees and took in all of the special effects created at that time. For them, their dream was doing something like that when they became adults. One individual, Phil Tippett, was a huge fan of the work of Ray Harryhausen, whose film contributions included The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, First Men in the Moon, and Jason and the Argonauts. A signature of Harryhausen's work was to create crazy monsters in stop-motion animation. By the way, if the name Harryhausen sounds familiar, but not necessarily because you know his movies, know that Pixar named the sushi restaurant in Monsters Incorporated Harryhausen's. Very appropriate because, that movie is, after all about monsters. Phil Tippett became part of ILM, or Industrial Light and Magic, in its infancy. One of the key moments in the first Star Wars film was the infamous holochess scene, or Dijarin, game that was played aboard the Millennium Falcon. It's a scene between Luke and Chewbacca. Phil Tippett created that scene and did so using stop motion animation, just like Harryhausen, where the depicted monsters fight with one another. Fast forward to The Mandalorian and Grogu, and without giving it all away, there's a scene in which there is a big fight between Mandalorian and another alien creature against 5 other alien creatures that seems to be in a sort of circular arena. At one point, the camera pulls up in a crane shot, at which point, if you know your Star Wars, you realize that the surface of this arena is marked off just like a holochess scene. It's a physical representation of the game played between Luke and Chewie. This moment symbolizes what this film is all about. This is not a Star Wars film in the same vernacular as the kind you would have seen in films 1 through 9 of the entire trilogy. Now, this is a Saturday matinee film intended for kids, but it's perhaps the best Saturday matinee film ever created. It's an astonishing sci-fi piece that pays homage to nearly 100-year precedent of such fantasy-style films. Oh, and there's plenty of practical stop-motion effects throughout this film done by none other than Phil Tippett and his group at Tippett Studio. The totality of the special effects in the film would make it worth seeing in a theater. On a big screen, they are amazing. Add to this some really great components, like the ultimate sci-fi actress Sigourney Weaver, who acts as Colonel Ward and is in charge of the bounty hunter's mission. Then there's the impressive score, which again showcases Ludwig Göransson's musical compositions and actually makes the film the first that did not use a John Williams score to pave through the whole film. It's just as gorgeous as you listen to it in the theater and makes it worth going to the theater. And then, of course, there's Grogu. The puppeteering of this little guy is really charming. They do a terrific job, and the child reminds us of the words of W.C. Field, "Never work with children and animals." Now, what doesn't work? Well, it's not that Pedro Pascal does work with children and animals. After all, that's not a child, it's a puppet. Second, Pedro is on the screen only about 10 minutes of the entire film, with 2 other actors playing his role and doing his stunts with the helmet on. The film's cinematic look makes it worthy of your biggest IMAX theater, but it doesn't make the film necessarily a cinema classic. It takes the timeless elements of story arc, character development, and messaging to create that kind of classic film, the kind you remember when you first saw Star Wars. That's not exactly what you get here. Don't miss me. I really liked The Mandalorian, Pedro Pascal in particular, and who doesn't like Grogu? I remember the day Disney Plus premiered, and I happened to wake up early that morning. I looked around at the numerous offerings on Disney Plus for the first time, but was curious about this thing called The Mandalorian. I watched the first episode early that morning and was blown away by the discovery that the bounty he's looking for is a baby Yoda in a carriage crib. I was so excited to share it with everyone, but I knew that it would have been one of the worst spoilers to give away. I urged every one of my family to see the first episode that day, and then went looking for Baby Yoda merchandise. A bizarre knitted hat was all I could see online. Nothing had been released yet. It had all been held back. I wanted that same wow moment in this film. It didn't happen for me. I've enjoyed many of the episodes that came in all 3 seasons of The Mandalorian, and put up with some other episodes. I didn't like the end of the 3rd season, but there were many highlights in between. Among them were some really wonderful actors, some of which died off in the series, or, like Cara Dune, was removed from the show, but others of which could have been included in the film, like Amy Sedaris, who manages Hangar 3 through 5 in Mos Eisley, playing the role of Peli Motto, Or the band of mercenaries in the Prisoner episode. They were so crazy. Or Emily Swallow, who plays the armorer. Or my real favorite, Fennec Shan, portrayed by Ming-Na Wen. None of these performers were included in this film, nor characters who were in the series, like Luke Skywalker or Boba Fett or Ahsoka Tano. I feel these characters, almost all face characters, would have added something more human to the film, giving it more gravitas. Even Sigourney Weaver is really more like a bookend, making assignments to Din Dijarin. I think it's a real miss. Instead, I get 3 new Hutts to look at, 3 big slugs, one of which is spending way too much time in the gym. But between 3 slugs, 1 masked bounty hunter, and 1 puppet, it's not enough to connect. Not for me. Between production budget, marketing, and distribution, the total cost of $300 million makes this film the lowest cost live-action theatrical release Disney has created so far in the Star Wars series. Solo, a Star Wars story, actually made less domestically than this film did in its first weekend, $84 million for Solo as opposed to $100 million for Mandalorian. Internationally, both films made about the same the first weekend. But the cost of making Solo was $300 million alone, not including marketing and distribution. So in many ways, this film was a winner when you look at how smart they approached the budget. But investment isn't what necessarily makes a great film. And by the way, I like Solo a lot better, though you would think by the reviews of the critics no one else did. Don't miss my point. It's a fun movie, but one you would want to take your kid to on a Saturday matinee. It's not a Star Wars classic, and it's certainly no Andor, which I would have paid good money just to see those 2 seasons shown in the theater back to back. And I honestly think Disney Plus would do itself a favor by cutting up the film into individual episodes when it does come on television. Now, having seen the film, that same day, I then went and visited Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland, at Disney's Hollywood Studios in Walt Disney World, to see the new version of the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. Here, we join Din Dijarin and Grogu as they track down ex-Imperial officers and a band of pirates, and hopefully bring some valuable cargo back to Hondo Ohnaka. This is part of a larger strategy to get people to show up at the parks this summer. For Walt Disney World, it involves not only a new version of Magic of Disney Animation and Rock and Roller Coaster starring the Muppets, but also a newly reopened Big Thunder Mountain, Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger spin, Soarin' Across America, and new Cool Kids summer activities highlighted by Bluey's Wild World Conservation Station. At Disneyland, their focus is on Bluey, Soaring Across America, and on the new mission at Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. Only it's not the only thing to really happen at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge there in that park. Essentially, their land has been somewhat divided up with different timelines and even different props and look and feeling and aesthetics. The last 3 films with characters across the Star Wars saga can be spotted throughout the forest portion of the land near Rise of the Resistance, while Black Spire Outpost now has Darth Vader and Imperial Stormtroopers, Luke Skywalker, Leia Organa, Han Solo, and in between Mandalorian Grogu and R2-D2 somewhere. There's also new merchandise and new food and beverage options. It's a much bigger offering and a much bigger change that has come to Disneyland. And all of these changes is underscored by John Williams' Star Wars film scores that greet you when you enter the lands and are then weaved together throughout the experience. After visiting Disneyland when it first opened, at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, it was one of my first primary concerns I had for the land. It needed the Star Wars score to underscore the experience. Well, that has finally happened at Disneyland. But none of these changes are really happening at Disney's Hollywood Studios, other than a new themed break area, the entrance across from Toy Story Land, which was desperately needed. Everything is very much the same. Even when you arrive at the Millennium Falcon and enter the hangar bay, it all looks pretty much the same. It even looks and sounds the same as you weave your way through the entirety of the queue. It's only when you reach Hondo Anaka that you sense that something is different in this attraction. When we arrived at Galaxy's Edge, we first stopped for a bite to eat at Docking Bay 7. I've been generous in my comments about this restaurant, even though its changes over time have been somewhat modest compared to the kinds of new offerings that come out at Disneyland. I had what was an original menu item, the smoked Kadu ribs. Originally, it had a purple cabbage slaw and a berry muffin. The slaw has been replaced by mac and cheese, no complaint there. I've had it with the tip yip chicken that also has been improved upon in the last year. But this mac and cheese today was a runny mess. And the berry muffin has been replaced by a sponge bread that is just an ugly and stupid tasting thing. I was hungry and it left me unsatisfied. Although, I did leave room for dessert, which was the Black Spire Mousse, a sort of white chocolate Jogan fruit creation on top of a brownie pistachio brittle. It at least counterbalanced the spice of the ribs when there was no muffin to do so. Well, never mind all this. We headed on to the attraction with a 25-minute wait. When we arrived to the pre-show with Hondo Anaka, the changes were subtle, but important to what lay ahead. Prior, there was an arrangement with Chewie to use the Falcon in helping to fund the Resistance by acquiring some obsidian. In this instance, Chewie was simply parking the car, so to speak, and leaving the keys with our favorite intergalactic pirate. Hondo then tells us we have a new plan as we head toward the ship. We join the boarding plank and are invited to join 4 others on this journey. That actually designates us as the engineers in the back, which you'll see was fortunate. Before we enter the cockpit and get strapped in, Hondo introduces us on the video monitor to the Mandalorian and Grogu, who then outlines our new mission and what we are about to do. We go into light speed quickly and head out to Tatooine to sneak upon these guys in canyons similar to what you might have seen during the pod racing scenes. As Din Dijarin is trying to figure out our next steps, we see on our cockpit monitors that Grogu has decided to hit the buttons. That fires rockets at the ship, and all 3 vessels then scatter in different directions. As engineers, we're assigned to put a homing signal onto the 3 ships, only to find out that they have fled into 3 different directions in the cosmos. And as engineers, you get to choose which of those 3 locations to go in. Suddenly, being an engineer is cool. There are 3 choices. The buttons say Bespin, Coruscant, or Endor. I chose them in that order, riding 3 times in a row utilizing single rider the second 2 times, and in each instance being designated as the engineer. On the Cloud City of Bespin, you chase an Imperial officer through the skies of Cloud City, dodging freighters and TIE fighters. I love the Cloud City of Bespin in The Empire Strikes Back, and quickly made the choice to go here first. Here you indeed go in and around the Cloud City, seeing how that all plays out in more detail than what you actually get when you watch The Empire Strikes Back. On my second run, we went to Coruscant, where you work together to hunt down a Sentinel assault shuttle. This is very much like Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, where you remember they dive into the craziness of this busy city at night. And at Endor, which was my third choice as the engineer, you might expect that you're going to find a forest location along with fuzzy little Ewoks. But that's the moon of Endor. Instead, as a crew, you navigate the debris field of the second Death Star that was blown up in Return of the Jedi. And here you're tracking a Trandoshan pirate hiding in the wreckage. With this, the visuals have apparently been enhanced using new graphic cards from Unreal Engine. Also, they've changed moving from Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal Engine 5, upgrading, thus making the environments theoretically much richer and higher in fidelity. With this, there's supposed to be multiple routes within each of those 3 destinations once you've arrived to that location. So not only do you have choices as to which of the 3 locations to go to, but you apparently have multiple routes within each location. The branching is much more sophisticated than before. Finally, I heard from my friend Nick and talking to him that apparently the look and feel of each location has been textured to look more like the films of the first 3 in the 1970s and early 80s. I haven't quite documented that, but it does sound fairly probable. I like all 3 choices I have as an engineer, but I found the Endor experience more engaging. That said, when I walked off the attraction the first time, which was Bespin, I asked my daughter what she thought about the whole of it. Earlier, when I had asked her about the movie we had been to, she noted how much better it was than what she originally thought it would be. But here, after riding the attraction, she said the very thing I was thinking. Both of us concluded at the same time that the graphics did not look good. I've since listened to several other podcasts and videos and found none of them have made a similar claim. I have to admit, I was trying to shoot 2 videos at the same time using also my meta glasses. But my daughter didn't want to get into the single rider line again and ride it. She sat out. And with going on it 3 times, I was present with 3 different groups of people. And listening to them afterwards, you know what? They all had a really great time. So I'm not sure. I've looked at the video again and again. It doesn't seem so bad in the video, but it did seem not so. It seemed more fake when I was actually on the ride. I can't quite explain it. I've actually created a video on YouTube, and it shows you what all 3 experiences look like when you jump off into hyperspace. So you're going to want to check it out and make sure like and subscribe when you're there. But it really does give you a sense of where you're going and helps you kind of make a decision for yourself. Is this where you want? Which one do you want to choose if you have the option? At any rate, more stuff to note here. Pilots seem to have more latitude as they drive through this experience. I haven't been a pilot yet, but this is what I've noticed. This is particularly true in the first Tatooine scene, which happens in all 3 sequences. This is kind of a space in the canyon you're flying through, kind of like in the pod racing sequences. You might consider this as more of a practice run that gives you a sense as a pilot how to go upwards or downwards or left or right. It kind of gives you more of a feel of the engine before you go into one of the 3 choices later on. You get to, in this mission, go into Lightspeed not twice, going out of Batuu and then back into Batuu, but you actually get 3 times with this new version because you are choosing at one point which of the 3 choices you're going to go to. You fly in and out of Batuu in the beginning and end, but it's a much shorter experience. And you're not set up to hit a rock as you climb out of the beginning and come back to the end. That was pretty frustrating. I haven't done a lot of pilot. I've usually taken on the other roles to let other people have an opportunity to do the pilot because they haven't done it before. But very seldom do I ever see people miss those rocks in the earlier version. Now you don't have all of that. And frankly, you go back into hyperspace pretty quick coming out of Batuu. The Mandalorian provides most of the audible direction during the ride. His voice is lower and it's steadier than Hondo's. Hondo's was more bombastic, sarcastic, and even critical of your performance. While you were gathering cargo during your mission, it now seems to be a little bit more of a minor part of the whole of it. Remember when you go get the first cargo in the previous sequence, you would send out a cable, and the cargo then fell down a hole, and um, Hondo says something. Well, that wasn't too hard, or was it? And then all of a sudden, you are thrown down into the hole, and there's a whole thing of then getting the cargo. It was just a big emphasis on getting the cargo. You have much less of that in here. You spend much more time in dogfights as you fly through these different worlds. There's a Grogu track version, similar to the Wookiee version. You have to do a set of switches and button pushing before you do so. But you already have a lot of time with Grogu, who appears on your screen to the side, and a little bit of the Mandalorian. And apparently the engineer can also press his fourth button. I haven't tried this yet, but see Grogu directly during the experience. I don't know that Grogu option is so really important. But at any rate, it is there apparently. There was music in the original attraction. It was customized largely by John Williams for this land. There was a whole specific sound for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which appeared in both Millennium Falcon and also in the Rise of the Resistance attraction. About the only time you heard it. In this new version, you hear familiar Star Wars themes, the ones that you know from the original. You don't hear anything, or you don't hear much of anything, really, from the new compositions done strictly for Mandalorian. What you hear are familiar Star Wars themes, and it's tied much more to the original musical selections. All in all, I can't say yet that this is a really great attraction. I need to go back on it several more times. I can't say it is. I would say it's better than the previous attraction, but I'm still kind of funked out by the graphics. That said, well, whether or not it's a much better attraction, it is a much better gaming experience for sure. And while I'm not a gamer per se, I'm intrigued enough to want to get back in the pilot's chair to see how well it works. I think Imagineers have tried to really take the feedback on the first version of the ride and make something much, much better. And I have to commend them for that. That said, even though we show familiar scenes from the original Star Wars films, I also think it sits marketing-wise in the shadow of the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. And so its ultimate success is somewhat dependent on how people respond at the box office or when they later see it on Disney+. I hope word of mouth favors these changes. I'd like to see this thing really succeed. And I think it's a real effort to really focus more on a sort of gaming experience in the parks. It's been a pioneer in that, and yet we're going to have to see how it plays out. At any rate, that's it. The ride and attraction, the film, all of it. Check it out this summer. If you like this kind of nerdy insight on all things Disney, then check out my newest offering. For over a year, I've been capturing and sharing stories of Disneyland while creating an online tool for you to explore them all in one place. It's called Disneyland Insights, inspiration, ideas, and magic for you and your organization. And it's an interactive multimedia experience. This is truly designed for those who are seeking to find new ideas that will guide you to provide individual and organizational leadership excellence, create employee engagement and a team culture, offer a superior customer experience. Not only does the content have example stories and models that play to these themes, but each section provides souvenirs for you and your organization. They are reflective questions that may be used to better the work or operation you may lead or be a part of. And in that instance, it's kind of more of a business focus. In fact, you may utilize funding set aside in your organization for training and development to purchase this volume. Click on the show notes page on DisneyInsights.com to see Disneyland insights, inspiration, ideas, and magic for you and your organization. You'll get a sense of what it's like, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. If you're looking for something to grab and go today, go to Amazon, where you'll find 4 of my books available for purchase. 3 explore Disney at length, and 1 explores world-class businesses to include Disney. So check them all out. And finally, thanks for joining us for this podcast. Know that is in the title of my organization, Performance Journeys. It's as much about the journey as it is about performance. Find the second star to the right and keep going straight on till you reach it. Follow the compass of your heart and know that with a smile and a song, a little faith, effort, and pixie dust, your dreams can come true. After all, if we can dream it, we can do it. Until next time, bright suns. We'll see you real soon.